What's going on, everybody? I am here live with you on both Instagram and YouTube, it says. We'll see how that works. How's everybody doing tonight? I went live yesterday, met up with a bunch of you, and posted some answers to questions and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that again. I'm also going to try to go live on TikTok at the same time, and I've never done that, so we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but TikTok's a lot harder to work with. So anyway, let me see if I can get that going. Hey everybody, hello, Ask Legit, the GOAT. Thanks, man. Go Army. How's everybody doing? Dude, sorry, I'm trying to get on TikTok here on my phone, and this thing is not simple. All right. So I got a couple things I was going to explain to you today, and then take any questions. If you guys asked a question yesterday that I didn't get to, I will try to get to it today. So sorry about that if you asked a question yesterday and I didn't get to it. Let's see. I'll start with Pickle, your question. How's your day? My day is awesome. If you guys don't follow it, it is the start of the NBA season in the United States. So I'm wearing my Phoenix Suns jersey, repping my hometown Phoenix here, and we're going to win tonight, game 1 of the season. So it's pretty exciting. It actually started yesterday, but tonight is like all the main games getting started out. All right, King Wasp, you asked if I could fly any World War II fighter plane, what would it be? Hands down, I would say the P-51. That is just iconic. It is awesome. Close second is probably the Spitfire. Those are just, when I think of World War II, I think of those two airplanes. I did a video recently on the Me-262, which I think was just a groundbreaking aircraft and super cool. But if I had to pick one, I'd go with the P-51. I think it is awesome. Paxman, how do you poop in a fighter jet? Nobody has answered. I answered a bunch of questions when people asked that in the comments, and my answer was one word: don't. That's it. Don't. So yeah, you hold it. I don't know what else to say, man. Have I ever flown in Germany? I have not ever flown a military aircraft in Germany. I have been to Germany many times. I was actually attached to a unit in Germany for a while, but it wasn't a flying assignment. It was like a staff assignment. And I've been to all over Germany. Love it, great country. But I never flew there in the F-16. And I have flown with the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, on a number of occasions. And I flew NJEP was how I went to pilot training. And in my NJEP class, there was like 6 students from Germany, and a bunch of my instructors were from Germany as well. So I have a lot of experience flying with Germany, but I haven't actually flown there in country. So let's see. Mavericks. Oh, dude, no, come on. Not the Mavericks. Anybody else? No, it's cool. Go Suns. Shipping out for the Army in 19 days, Victor Korop. Congrats, man. Best of luck to you, wherever your career path takes you. The only piece of advice I'll give you, you didn't ask for advice, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. There's a lot of people who complain every day that they're in the military. You're going to experience them everywhere you go. Don't be one of those people. There's a lot of good. There's things you're not going to like. Not everything is perfect, but just make the best of your scenarios, and you're going to get so much farther in life, promise you. 949 Miguel, you said, have you heard of NJEP during USAFA? I went through NJEP, so yes, I'm very familiar with NJEP. For those of you who are not, NJEP stands for Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. I believe there's more than one location. The one that's in the United States is at Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. And there's like, I don't know, 6 countries or something that fly and learn to fly out of Shepherd Air Force Base. Really cool program because you get to meet pilots from all over the world. It's a bunch of other NATO and allied countries flying there, learning how to fly, and it's pretty cool. Hard to get in, but he said it increases fighter pilot chances. Yeah, so NJEP, jokingly, in the fighter pilot community, we call it private school. So if you get picked up for NJEP while you're a cadet, you have a really high likelihood of getting a fighter. It's not guaranteed, but yeah, we call it private school for a reason. So Isaac, Phoenix, it's going to be our season. I agree, man. It's going to be, this is it. This is the one. All right? Remember, you heard it here first. I also said it at the start of last season too, though. So All right, FBN0, you asked if I like the Rafale or the Typhoon better. So I will tell you that I have never flown one-on-one against the Rafale, but I have flown against the Typhoon, and I love it. It's a great airplane. My understanding is that they're similarly equipped and matched, but the Eurofighter, and people have asked me if I had to pick one foreign airplane to fly, the Eurofighter Typhoon is definitely the airplane I would pick. A lot of the countries who fly the Typhoon are also now flying the F-35. I think it's a great complement. They complement each other well, just like the F-16 and the F-35 work together well. But yeah, the Typhoon is really an amazing airplane, so I'm a big fan. Julia Curran, you asked what I majored in college. I studied civil engineering. I went to a school called Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida, and it was great. And I went there on an Air Force scholarship. I really wanted to study aeronautical engineering, and the Air Force said, here's your scholarship for civil engineering. They told me, when you get there, you can switch, no problem. I got there. It wasn't quite that simple, but after about a year or so, I really enjoyed it, and so I stuck with it. I studied civil engineering, and for me, the way I viewed it was a little bit of a fallback. If things didn't work out flying the F-16 for whatever reason, I figured, cool, I'll be an engineer because it's kind of fun. And then once I actually went through pilot training, became a fighter pilot, jokingly I would say I used to build targets, and now I know how to get rid of them. Anyway, Lucifer Morningstar from YouTube, I look like Rooster Bradshaw from Top Gun 2. I'm going to take that as a compliment because I'm like way older than him, so I think it's mostly the mustache. But I have not played football on the beach with a bunch of other fighter pilots with our shirts off yet. Let's see. A couple other people saying hi. How you guys doing? Thanks for joining in. Italo Bando, you asked if I'm going to fly for the airlines. I am not. Most of my friends who finish a career flying fighters do go fly for the airlines. It's a pretty smooth transition from one to the other. You go through an upgrade program, learning to fly the different airplane. But if you fly at all, you kind of know that every airplane functions a little bit the same. You pull back on the yoke or the stick, and the houses get smaller. You push forward, and the houses get bigger. And every airplane operates pretty much that way. So switching from one to the other, you just got to practice landing from 2 stories up in a big airliner, where in a fighter you're a lot down there closer to the runway. My second career, though, is in finance. I'm actually the CFO of our companies, and I love it. It's super cool. If you haven't seen on my TikTok, I do a lot of stuff on financial freedom, because one of my big passions in life is if you're joining the military right now, you're about to enter, or you just signed up or whatever, I can tell you with 99% accuracy every dollar you're going to make for the next 20 years if you choose to stay in, right? With that, now it's just a math problem, and I can tell you how you can retire from the Air Force or the military, whatever branch in the United States. I can show you the way to retire a millionaire, and so that's one of my big passions. So my second career is in finance. I'm a CFO. I went back to school while I was still on active duty. I went to Columbia Business School in New York City. I went through their CFO program and really sharpened my skills on finance that I'd always kind of been into. And now flying is a hobby. I get to go fly when I want to, but I fly small civilian airplanes. I had a King Air for a little while, and then last week I went flying in a Cirrus with a friend, so pretty cool. I'm trying to keep up with the comments, but you guys are asking good questions. Have I ever flown a Sukhoi 30 MKI, the Su-30? I have not, but I think it would be a blast. So a lot of people have commented on my videos asking about Russian fighter jets. I tell everybody, I got a lot of respect for them. And if I had to pick one Russian aircraft to fly, I would go fly the Su-35. I always thought that was pretty cool with the thrust vectoring and all that. And if you know anyone who has one who would let me fly it, I'd love to fly it. That'd be super fun. So yeah, all right. Let's see, my favorite civilian plane. Ooh, that's a tough one. I guess someday I plan to own a Gulfstream. That's pretty far off in the future, but that's my plan. You know, you got to have big goals. Aim high. So it's probably a Gulfstream, like a G650 or something. But I do love flying the King Air. Can take my whole family, load up whatever we want on there, and that's got pretty good range and all that stuff. Brooks Shank 808, you asked F-35 or F-22, and I would say it depends. What is the mission that you're flying? I love the F-35. It is an amazing jet. It is a leap forward in technology and everything. So I'm a huge fan of the F-35. For any naysayers out there who say it's not good, you're wrong. It's amazing. The F-22 is also a great jet, though. So I would say it probably depends. Amar Ahmad 9963 teach me to fly a fighter jet. I don't have a fighter jet to teach you on, but I was an instructor for many, many years in the U.S. Air Force, and I taught hundreds of young kids coming right out of college, taught them how to fly fighters, and it was great. I loved it. I was really passionate about it because you get to kind of like instill in the next generation that love of flying, that passion. You get to teach them what you know and hope that they go on and learn way more than you ever knew. So yeah, that's Stalking the Wild, my favorite civilian plane. I already answered that one. All right. Let's see. Lucifer Morningstar, you asked if I ever went to Fallon, Nevada to fly with the their program there with the Navy. I have not. I have flown at a few naval bases around the country in exercises and just going out there to do, we call it DACT, Dissimilar Air Combat Training. And those are always great. I love DACT trips. You learn a lot. You get to fly against something other than an F-16 because we get really good. We fly a lot of missions against other F-16s because that's what's in our squadron. But I loved going out and flying against other airplanes. It lets you really test your mettle against other pilots from other branches. And the Navy was always great hosts for us. And there was always a lot of camaraderie. We give each other crap, and you talk to fighter pilots, and they always give each other crap about whatever service, and that's cool between fighter pilots. But I got nothing but love for them. Oh man, I'm gonna have to just jump down to the bottom of the question. Sorry guys, there's a lot. Am I able to lend money to open a restaurant for 3 years? What would be my percentage collateralized by the business? If you're asking like a theoretical question, what you should expect for lending money for a restaurant, we could talk about that, but I'm not personally going to lend money. That's I have a lot of other projects going on, and they're exciting and they're fun, and we're doing a lot. Let's see. Do I think it's easier for someone with no experience to get in the hot seat? For Ralphson, you're asking there. I think you mean to get in and fly a fighter jet. I would say no, it's not easy. I have flown a lot of people in the back seat where I've allowed them to fly and said, here, it's your turn to fly, try this. And I'm kind of talking them through it. And if you've never flown a fighter jet before, it's a little bit challenging. But we always say, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So you don't step in on day one and go fly a fighter jet. You actually learn a little bit at a time. And as you do that, you get better and better and better. You learn step by step, kind of like baby steps, and eventually you're a full-up fighter pilot. And so I would not recommend going in and trying to just fly a fighter jet on your first day without any training. Mostly in the landing is where I would worry for your safety. Stalking the Wild, could steps for financial freedom work for people in law enforcement? Yeah, absolutely. I think too often people don't have a long-term plan. And when I'm telling you this, I want you guys to know, like, I didn't have like some magical formula when I started, but I did retire from the Air Force financially free in a really great situation. And I didn't have that vision when I set out, but now in hindsight, I can look back and go, for any job that is like a law enforcement job, a government job, a military job, I can tell you with pretty close accuracy how much you're going to make over the course of the next 20 years. So you could sit down and plan it out and just say, this is where I want to be in 20 years, and work it backwards to what can I do today, starting today, to go on to do that. There's a lot of really small steps that people take for granted. I'll give you one quick example, and then we'll get back to talking about flying. But if you go out tomorrow, let's say on your way to work, and you buy a cup of coffee, whatever, if you love it, do it, I don't care. But the average cup of coffee right now is like $4, right? Well, if you're 18 years old and you buy a $4 cup of coffee on your way to work, let's just say you just joined the military, you're on your way in. That $4 is worth $352 in retirement, because $1 invested at age 18 is worth $88 in retirement. If you wait just 10 years and invest that $1 when you're 28 instead of when you're 18, it's worth less than half of that. It's worth like 37 bucks or something like that. So the key to investing is starting early. And I always tell people, it doesn't feel easy when you're brand new in the military. You think, hey, I'm not making that much money. I'm 18, 19 years old, and I've got these bills to pay. Here's the thing. It doesn't get easier. When you're 28 and you're married and you have a kid, it's not easier then, and you can never go backwards and invest earlier in your career. So you might feel the pinch, but you are actually better off investing from age 18 to 28 and then stopping. If you invest from 18 to 28 and do nothing else the rest of your life, you're in better shape than if you start at 28 and invest until retirement. And when I explain that to people, it's usually eye-opening because they're like, oh yeah, by the time I'm 28, I'll probably have a family and I want to invest less. Maybe you draw back a little bit on your investments, but start early. All right, there's tons of questions about flying. So I'll jump back into those. Eli House, you asked what I think of flying at Kingsley Field and the instruction there. So I love Kingsley Field. I've gone TDY there a couple of times. What's cool about Kingsley Field is the airspace is really close and there's kind of like no one else out there. When you're flying in Phoenix, where I'm at now, and my last assignment was in Phoenix, there is a ton of traffic in and around Phoenix. If you don't know, Phoenix is the 5th largest city in America, which is huge. Tons of traffic in and out. And so you spend a lot of time dodging other airplanes, getting to your airspace. The airspace is, there's a lot of restrictions where you can go supersonic, where you can do whatever. Kingsley Field, Oregon is beautiful country. You take off, you turn right, and you're in the airspace in like minutes. It's great, and it's pretty wide open airspace. It's good location, centrally located for other bases with tanker support and other stuff. And so yeah, it is a great place to fly if you ever get the chance, go fly at Kingsley Field. And the instructors there were always great. We flew a lot of DACT that I mentioned, dissimilar air combat training, F-16s against F-15s when we were out there. And that was always a lot of fun. So really good. I know a lot of people have asked who would win F-15 or F-16. And I always say, man, it depends on the pilot. It really does. And so obviously in this case, since I'm the one talking, it would be me. All right. IKO Online, say hi to all aviators in Brazil. Aviator Day, dude, that's awesome. Hi to all the aviators in Brazil. That is super cool. I've got Brazil on my bucket list. I'm going to try to go visit next year. I think it'd be awesome to get down there for Carnival or go down to Rio. Super cool. So yeah, for sure. Hi to everybody in Brazil, all the aviators out there. T. Peter Tona, I'm not sure how to say your handle there, but you're headed to UPT in a few months. That is great, man. Here's what I will tell you that I didn't actually know when I started. I didn't realize that literally everything you do is graded from the moment you show up. I only found that out like halfway through. And then I was immediately like, oh crap, what did I do in the first few weeks? So what I would say is get your mindset right that you are there not just to study and learn like you were in college, but you are there because it's your profession. So step into it that everything you're going to learn is going to stay with you for the rest of your career. And this is your career now. You're a professional aviator. So go in with that mentality and absorb as much as you can, learn as much as you can, treat everything like that, and you'll do just fine. Because you'll see a lot of other people show up and they show up still with that college mentality, like, oh, I'm here to study and I'm studying for a test. But they're not really diving into it like, I got to know this information for the rest of my life. And if you come at it from that direction, I think you'll do just fine. All right, let's see. Blah, blah, see. You want to fly the C-17 Globemaster for a living. Love the C-17. Super cool airplane. Yeah, if you go to pilot training and you put C-17s first, you still got to graduate, at the decent spot in your class because a lot of people want to fly the C-17. But that thing has global reach. It's done amazing missions. I know a lot of C-17 pilots. They're great aviators, and they do some really important stuff they do a lot of humanitarian missions, which I think is incredible. And some of the experiences that those pilots have had are things that I have never experienced and will never experience because I just didn't do that. I did a different mission. So C-17 is awesome. Good luck to you. I hope you get the opportunity. That's really great. K. Agyemang, you asked if I've ever blacked out while flying. I have not. In the F-16, if you black out while flying, there's a good chance you're not going to survive it. So we put a lot of emphasis on training for pulling Gs, on preparing for pulling Gs. Now, a few years ago, they did go back and add something to the aircraft called Auto GCAS, that is Ground Collision Avoidance System. It's amazing. I know it's in testing right now for the FAA as well, which is super cool. I hope they put it on every airplane ever. But the gist of it is if you black out in the F-16 now with Auto GCAS, the airplane will recover at a certain point to level flight so it won't hit the ground. And I know it's already saved lives, and if we had installed it 30 years ago, it would have saved a whole bunch of lives along the way, so that's really cool. I've not personally ever blacked out. The closest I've ever come is in the centrifuge. I posted a video of me in the centrifuge. I'm going to post a couple more. One of them got banned from TikTok because it wasn't high enough quality. It's just because it's like, it's like 100 years old, man. But anyway, that's the closest I've ever come where I got that tunnel vision and light loss, and you're straining as hard as you can to try to get your vision back. But the centrifuge is no joke. All right. Yes, Chen, you asked how difficult it is to become a pilot, age of 25 to 35. I think if this is what you want to do, it's your dream, and you really go after it, I don't think that being 25 to 35 matters. I know people who didn't get started until they were much later in life to flying. So I would say it's not that much more difficult, just if you commit to it. Now, like with anything, it's kind of a perishable skill, especially in the beginning. If you're going to go out and become a pilot, it's not something you just mess around with, like, oh, I'm going to fly once here, once there. Because once you're on your own and you solo and you get your private pilot's license, there's no instructor sitting next to you. And if you make a mistake in a small airplane, it can be catastrophic for you. So yeah, I would say it's not too late to start. If you want to fly in the United States Air Force, you have to be selected for pilot training by age 33, which means finish with your college degree and through the selection process. So you can do the math and back it up to when you turn 33 and when the boards meet. You can find all that info online, but it's not too late. So good luck to you. That's awesome. Let's see. Did I ever log stick time in the A10? I did not. So the A10, they do not have a two-seat version. And before someone corrects me, technically they built two of them. They crashed one. There's one that's like in a museum. But they don't fly a two-seat version of the A10. So you can't just go get stick time. So I do have stick time in the F-15 because I was able to jump in the back seat. Like when I go up to Kingsley Field, if we had an empty back seat in the F-16, our bros over in the F-15 squadron would come jump in the back, and then they would get to fly. And the same thing for us, we could jump in the back of an F-15 if they had an empty seat and it didn't impact their mission. And then, so I have time flying the F-15, but not in the A-10. There's no two-seat versions. Now I have flown the A-10 simulator, which is also pretty fun. And if you've ever been in an Air Force simulator, like a full-up one, they're super cool. Ours that were like full dome all around you, all directions. And when that door closes, people would sometimes get vertigo inside the simulator because it's so realistic seeming. So that's pretty cool. G, you asked if it's normal to get a G-lock. It is not normal. It happens very seldom because we spend a lot of time just training for that. And so where it does happen is either very young, brand new pilots, their first couple high G sorties, they have an instructor in the back seat to make sure they get a good feel for it and they're up to the task because it's a pretty serious thing. And then occasionally it'll happen if you bring somebody along for like a familiarization flight. I got to do those tons of times in my career, and they were so much fun because it was like job appreciation day. Here's somebody, maybe it's like a maintainer or somebody from a different career field who's getting an opportunity to fly in an F-16, and I get to be their pilot. It's so cool. And on those flights, occasionally the person would G-lock in the back seat, and you could always tell because I'd tell them to follow my breathing in the G strain, and we're doing that short breath where you close off your glottis and you exhale and inhale short and quick. And I'm listening to their breathing, and when it stops and goes quiet, I know that they G-lock, so I ease off, let them wake up, talk to them. I would never do it on purpose, but it has happened. And I've had a couple really cool flights with people in the back seat. Like I talked yesterday about Saru Shalvi, the founder of Vice News. He flew in the back seat with me. Martha Raddatz from ABC flew in the back seat. I flew with Larry Fitzgerald in 2014 when he flew at Luke Air Force Base. I was not his pilot, but I was flying that day. And I actually got to talk to Larry about that not long ago. It's pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, a lot of cool opportunities and experiences there. Ooh, scrolling back down through the comments. All right. Caroline Stewart, don't know if it's an obvious question, but what do you eat before flying? It's not an obvious question. It's a good question. Jokingly, when I would have someone do a FAM flight in the back seat, I would always tell them to eat canned peaches because it tastes the same coming back up. But no, I just eat normal. I try to eat a pretty healthy, keep it pretty healthy. I eat salad for lunch, normal breakfast, that kind of stuff. But in the beginning, some people are a little, they have an uneasy stomach or something like that, and they might watch what they eat. But yeah, once you're used to flying a fighter jet, you just kind of eat whatever. Usually we don't skip a meal though, because you don't want to have that like dip in blood sugar or feel any lightheadedness or anything like that. Sodlor, is that a Booker jersey? Yeah, buddy, you know it is. That's awesome. Thanks for recognizing. Shout out to D-Book. I doubt he's watching right now. He's prepping for his game. But if D-Book ever wants to come check out the F-16, I would gladly give him a tour. Cool. All right. What should you study in school to become a fighter pilot? That's a good question. I studied engineering. In high school, I would say your focus should be on what are you going to do to get into a decent college and get selected for either ROTC, Air Force Academy, or later you could apply to OTS, Officer Training School. So yeah, and then once you're in college, technically any college degree will work. And I have friends who studied, like underwater basket weaving, and they got a pilot slot, and that's fine. Not really, that's the joke, but you know what I mean. You can have any degree. But I will say that later in life, if you want to go to test pilot school or you want to be an astronaut or do one of those advanced programs, you have to have a technical degree. So to go to test pilot school, you have to have an engineering degree. It's a lot harder to go back and get an engineering degree the second time through once you're already a pilot. So if you think you might want to do that later in life, like if your end goal is to be an astronaut, then I would say study engineering, physics, something along those lines. Let's see. Hassan, can I hold root formation for 15 minutes? Bro, I have held root and close formation for 6+ hours. So yeah, for sure. One time I was flying from Korea to Alaska, and we're on our way there to fly in an exercise in Alaska called Red Flag Alaska. Super cool exercise. We take off, we rejoin with the tanker, and shortly after takeoff, we enter the weather. And there's pretty much just socked in weather from like 10,000 feet to 40,000 feet. And so we have to stay in formation with each other the entire flight. We break out with like maybe an hour left. And so for about 6 hours straight, we're flying in close formation, because when you're in the weather, your in-flight visibility could be as low as like 5 feet. I have flown through really dense clouds before where you're 3 feet off the other airplane's wingtip, and they're going in and out of the cloud, and you're fighting to stay in formation. On this day, the clouds were, not quite as dense, so we're hanging out kind of in like root formation. Occasionally, we move into close formation, but as we're each taking a turn refueling, you got to stay in close formation, because if you lose sight of the tanker, you got to go lost wingman. You got to work this whole rejoin procedure, and if you can't get back visual with the tanker when you're over the Bering Strait, that sucks. That's a really bad day. So yeah, I flew in formation, root and close formation for about 6 hours, and man, my neck was killing me because I'm looking to the side for the entire time. We did switch like halfway through the flight. We swapped which wing we were each on so we could stop looking right and we could start looking left or whatever. But that's still, that's pretty rough. All right. Love from India. What is up? Pratik 99. I spent a couple weeks in India, and it was a really cool experience. I was in Delhi, Jaipur, and Agra, the Golden Triangle. Got to go see the Taj Mahal, spent a bunch of time in Delhi. It was super cool. So my favorite food in the world, Indian food. Loved it. So love from America. Awesome. How long does it take to go from 120 to 180 miles per hour in an F-16? Not very long at all. What's kind of interesting is the faster you go faster, if that makes sense. So going from 100 to 200 actually takes longer than going from 400 to 500. So 120 to 180, that's right around our takeoff. So we're usually rotating and lifting off around like 170 knots, plus or minus a bit, depending on our weight and configuration. So that 120 to 180 is the speed you're seeing as we light the afterburner, accelerate down the runway, and lift off. And we're usually off the runway in like 3,000 to 4,000 feet, so a little over half a mile. But then once you're airborne and flying up and away and you're going, 300 knots or something to get to 400 knots, it happens real quick. And that's, even without afterburner, just going to mil power, which for us, we call mil power, military power. That's like full forward power. And then afterburners, you rotate outboard and you go to afterburner, and that's when you get a lot more thrust when the afterburner kicks in. The best book, Hamid Smith, the best book for reading to become a pro in aerial combat. That's a good question. I've got a ton of good books on aviation, but most of them are more historical rather than like practical application. So I'll make a video on like my top aviation books because I love to read. I probably average 1 to 2 books a week in general. And so I've got an entire like library of aviation books. So I'll give you like my top 5 or something like that. But specifically for ACT, I don't know if there's any really good book out there for ACT. But let me look on my shelf and see, and I'll make you a video and post it on Instagram. All right. Does the F-16 really have a higher thrust to weight ratio? So I know you guys have seen me answer this online before, and I'm going to say it again. And jokingly, we say it's the answer to every question. It depends. It depends on a lot of things. So the biggest thing that it depends on is your configuration. So if you're carrying external tanks and external stores and things that are hanging on your wing that weigh a lot, it takes a lot longer to accelerate. In a perfectly clean F-16, typically your thrust to weight ratio is greater than 1. And if your thrust to weight ratio is exactly 1, in theory, you can just hold that vertical position. If it's greater than 1, you can accelerate vertically. It also depends on density, altitude, temperature, a lot of other factors. But it also depends on what block F-16 you're in, right? If you're flying with a Pratt & Whitney 229 engine, is an amazing engine that's in the block 52, block 72, and that's really cool. And so you're going to get a lot more thrust out of that engine than out of the older Pratt & Whitney 220. There's also the GE 129, the GE 100. So there's a lot of different engines that go into the different blocks of the F-16. And so it really does depend which engine, which block. All those things are factors that affect it. Cool. All right, the best military school to become a military pilot, in my opinion. You know, the Air Force Academy, I believe, has the highest selection rate to pilot training. At least that's what I've always been told. I don't have statistics to back it up, but in my experience, I think it has the highest selection rate to pilot training. Where if you go through ROTC at one of the other schools, your selection rate is going to be about 60 to 65%. Now that's across the country. If you're specifically at like A&M, they have a huge corps of cadets, or if you're at Embry-Riddle with another great big ROTC detachment, I think they tend to have higher selection rates, especially if you rank well within those detachments, because you're talking about like, you know, 50 people applying for pilot training out of those schools, rather than some of the smaller schools that have 1 or 2 pilots or 1 or 2 cadets applying. But yeah, the Air Force Academy is probably your best bet if you're trying to get selected for pilot training. ROTC is another great option, and that's what I did. So yeah, all right. Let's see. My hair and mustache combo are throwing you for a loop. Well, I don't know why that is, but that's what I was blessed with. I always say that my hair is turning blonde on the side, but I think it's actually maybe a little white. And so is my mustache in the corners, but whatever, that's just how it grows. If I grew in the full goatee, it would match my hair. But my mustache has always been dark. I don't know why that is. That's I was born this way, so sorry. Yes, Lucifer, in mustache we trust. I like to call it the trustache. How can you not trust somebody with one of these, right? Awesome. All right. Caroline Stewart, how did I become a pilot? I went through ROTC. I had 0 flight experience. I graduated high school. I had an ROTC scholarship. And for me, growing up, I was one of 7 kids. My dad was a carpenter and my mom was a homemaker. So I really wanted to go to college, but we couldn't afford it. And so I knew I needed to find my own way to get to college. And so I applied to a lot of different opportunities like that, like the Air Force Academy, ROTC. I got an ROTC scholarship and I went to Embry-Riddle. I studied engineering there on an Air Force ROTC scholarship. And then at the end of my degree, I applied for pilot training. I didn't have any flight experience. I got selected, and the first thing that they sent me to do was to go get a private pilot's license in a Cessna 172, and that was my first exposure. It was after college. So, all right. Army ROTC, Alfie? No, I went to Air Force ROTC, but there's multiple ROTC programs. There are some cross-commissioning programs as well. All right, let's see. Love the mustache. Thank you very much. If I wasn't a pilot, what other job would I want? Man, that's a tough question. I like my job now. I'm in finance now, if you weren't here at the start when I talked about that. I'm really passionate about finance and trying to set up the next generation to succeed, because I think we're on the verge of a ton of great opportunities in the United States with our economy. And if I can teach just a few people how to retire from the Air Force as a millionaire, I would love to do that, because that's one of my passions. So I'm going to talk a lot on this channel about that. I know a lot of people want to hear about flying. They don't want to hear about finance, but I promise you flying is more fun when you're financially free. Trust me. Cool. Hello from Australia. What is up, Australia? I spent some weeks down in Australia in Melbourne. Great time. Lucifer, have I heard of the Dark Star plane? The plane from Top Gun? Yeah, I've heard of it. My understanding is they built one for that movie. And so as far as does it really exist, I heard there's an actual airplane. I've not seen it. But actually, we were doing an air show last year, and we tried to get the Dark Star plane to come to our air show. I don't know if it flies or they move it on a truck, but my understanding is that they actually built an airplane for that movie. So that's my only understanding of it, though. I don't know anything else about it other than what I saw in Top Gun, and it looked cool. So I'm down for that. If you joined Air Cadets, would it be easier to get into a pilot school? When you're getting selected for ROTC, they look at everything you do. And later, when you get selected for pilot training in the Air Force, they look at everything you did in college. And for college, they look at everything you did in high school. So treat it like an extracurricular activity. It's good to be involved in more than one if you're open to that. It's not going to hurt you to be in Air Cadets, but it's not going to be like a guaranteed spot. I've heard people say that before. They were told if they did junior ROTC, they were guaranteed a spot. That is not true, but it can help you. It doesn't hurt to have those, one more feather in your cap when you go to apply. I've got about 5 minutes left and then I'm going to jump off. But if you guys didn't know, I signed up for this 2-week Go Live challenge. So I'm going to try to go live every day around like 4 to 5 p.m. Arizona time. I was a little late today. And I'll keep answering questions. If I didn't get to your question today, it wasn't on purpose. I'm just going through them as quickly as I can, trying to answer them. But I'll be back tomorrow around the same time. And if you have your question, drop it in there and I'll try to get to it. M. Gas Sulp, you said you read some pilots do an interchange to fly Navy. Yeah, that is true. We do inter-service swaps all the time. It's usually for one assignment. It's typically not for the rest of your career. But I flew with a lot of Harrier and F-18 pilots who came over to the F-16. I trained them how to fly, actually, in our squadron. And then they were full-up F-16 pilots for a while, some of them in operational squadrons, some of them in training squadrons. And then we send U.S. Air Force pilots over to the Navy in return. So we do a lot of those exchanges. It helps us to just kind of understand the sister services better. We call them joint assignments. And later on in your career, it just it gives you a broader horizon and more breadth of experience. Would I join the Air Force and not the Navy for aviation? The naval aviation is awesome, right? But the Air Force has about 12,000 pilots and the Navy has about 6,000. So if you're just looking statistically who has more, the Air Force has more pilots. So if you just say, and the Air Force also has more options, right? You can fly C-17s, you can fly F-35s, you can fly F-22. There's so many more options in the Air Force. But naval aviation is also really cool. So if that's something that interests you and you really want to take off and land on a boat, then go check it out. That wasn't my thing. You just went to an air show. I am Tommel, and you saw the Thunderbirds. Yeah, I love the Thunderbirds. I have a couple good friends on the Thunderbirds, and they are so much fun to watch. Love the sneak attack, and when they come raging over your head, it's so much fun. I love going to air shows. Is there much difference between becoming a pilot in Canada than in America? Shout out to all the Canadians out there. What's up? My dad is Canadian, actually. So people have asked if you can, if you have to be born in America or a full U.S. citizen to fly. I was born in the United States. I'm a U.S. citizen, but my dad was not. I was still a pilot. You do have to be a U.S. citizen to fly, but you can go through, get a green card, and become a naturalized citizen and still be a pilot. I have never gone through the process of becoming a pilot in Canada, so I really can't answer that accurately, although my understanding from my relatives who still live in Canada is that it's very similar. And there's a lot of Canadian pilots who go through U.S. training, and a lot of U.S. pilots also transfer up, and we do exchanges between the Canadians, the RCAF, and the USAF as well. So the RCAF comes down and flies here in Phoenix every winter when it's freezing cold up there. Malachi the Coolid, you said if you get in a jet accident, it's not your fault. Can you get punishment? I actually made a video. I'll drop it this week about that. If you are in an incident involving an aircraft, they do a very thorough investigation. If it's not your fault, no, you don't get in trouble. And I've had some minor mishaps in my career. In fact, that's how I got my call sign Motor Magnum on the only runway. 1,000-pound air-to-ground missile fell off my jet on landing. But the pilot was not at fault, is what it said in the final report, which was good. So I didn't get in trouble for that. It wasn't my fault. Shit happens, I guess. All right. 2 more questions, and then I got to bounce because there's a Suns game to go watch, people, and I know all of you are excited to go watch the Suns game as well. Did I do IQT at Holloman for the F-16? I did not. I did my training at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix initially, way back in the day, like 06, 07 timeframe, and then I came back through a transition course again in Phoenix in 2014, and then I've been in Phoenix since 2018 as an instructor here, and then I retired out of here this past August, 2 months ago. So yeah, let's see. Angie, you say your main goal is to do imagery for the Air Force and you love the aircraft so much. We have a really cool career field called combat camera, and they're individuals who get qualified to fly in the back seat of an F-16 or an F-15 and take photos. And some of the cool Air Force footage you see is from people in the combat camera program. So check that out. It's super cool. Not everybody gets to do it, but it is through public affairs. And so if you go into a career field in public affairs, one of the opportunities you can apply for is combat camera. So if you're really into doing imagery for the Air Force and you love aircraft, go check that out because there's some really cool career fields around that. Awesome. And then finally, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining in. I'm going to do this every day for the next 2 weeks. And then after that, we'll see. I'll try to do some more. But if you have more questions, show up tomorrow or sometime in the near future. I'll try to get to all the questions. I really do appreciate everybody showing up. And have a great night. Go Suns.